Katie tweeted out accurate information like she always does. And Ida actually talked to the same dev that she has probably. And he said, this is like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, in a group that I was in, we're probably sharing the same group, that the Pulsechain dev, who's a legitimate Pulsechain dev, who's more vocal in the community, I guess he's probably the token Pulsechain dev that's talking to us in
Yeah,
Telegram.
double agree.
But he had said that a week ago or more, that the staking contract changes, the Shanghai it's not gonna keep Pulsechain from launching. I think he said that like a week ago that I read that. So
And
I think he tweeted that
question.
today. If withdrawals aren't available on Pulsechain, there's going to be some people like myself who are going to be validators because I want to run a validator. But am I going to run like 100 validators with no foreseeable short-term access to those funds? Maybe not. Maybe I do 1 or 10, and then if withdrawals are available, then I could stake 100. I mean, I'm just throwing numbers out there, right? I'm not running 100, but but I'm just saying, I could run like 1, and then maybe I run like 10 if withdrawals are out. And there's a lot of other people that are in the same position, right? You don't want to be locked up forever because they were going to launch Shanghai last year, and then it became March, and now it's September, and then maybe it becomes 2024.
And that is what the devs are trying to work on right now, is mitigating that dumpage or the amount of people unstaking at one period of time. Like, they're trying to make like a queue, so to speak, for people to actually be able to unstake. So only a certain amount of people can unstake at a set time variable.
So mass adoption comes with increased scalability. I think that's a calling card for a adoptable blockchain. And recently, there was the announcement that basically, I know it was indirect, that Pulsechain is not going to have 12-second block times, but it's going to have 10. So regarding mass adoption, now, is 10-second block times the slowest? No. Is it the fastest? No. My question to you guys is, in order to bring about mass adoption, especially for 130 projects launching on Pulsechain, we're going to need scalability. So if I were a developer or builder and I wanted more people to come onto Pulsechain and build on it, what would you say is the most viable perspective for developer or dApp acquisition on the Pulsechain, given the fact that there are other chains that are faster and obviously more well established, have been around longer than Pulsechain? So I'm curious to hear your guys' perspectives on that.
A foundation.
I would argue a little bit against one point you made. So how scalable is Bitcoin? Because it seems to only get slower and slower and slower, and there's no dev work on it, yet it is mass adopted. How scalable is the dollar bill? It's mass adopted around the world. People don't like it per se, but you can't really do anything with it except the government can print more of it, right? So the common theme in anything is community. How passionate is the community in this tech or this thing that you've built or created? We have that, right? Not everyone likes hexagons, but the hexagon community is very strong, passionate. You see all the different protocols that are building things, some out of their own pocket, some through other means. But people are excited to build on Pulsechain, and it will be the only chain that I've ever seen. And there's literally been over 1,000 blockchains. You may have heard of 20 or 30 of them, but there's literally over 1,000 blockchains. How many of them have launched with over 200 protocols right towards the beginning of it? None of them, right? So this community grows in an exponential fashion, and that's what drives adoption more than the tech behind it.
That was the answer I was looking for. So I was just curious to hear if you guys believe the same perspective I did, that community basically creates utility. And without community, there is no utility. So I was waiting for someone to bring that up. So
hey guys, well, let me add to that real quick, Corey. So a 10-second block time doesn't make Pulsechain any less scalable, right? It depends on how many transactions you can get into that block. 10 seconds is certainly not a limiting factor. What you want for adoption is you want to give the community something to do, like a reason to be there, a reason to have their money deployed there, and some activity that they'd like to engage in, right? So I think that's more about the adoption. And to get that to happen, you need people to build stuff that the community actually wants to use. So if you write a chain in something that's completely new, that there's no talent for yet, or people have to figure it out and all that stuff, that actually slows down adoption. So the fact that this is all very similar to Ethereum as it is today, you already have a giant talent pool out there that's ready to build stuff. And that's the main thing. That's how you serve the community and attract, give them more value.
So Ethereum has like say 1.3, 1.5 million transactions a day. Until Pulsechain gets that amount of transaction volume, scalability doesn't matter at all. It literally doesn't matter at all unless full blocks. And you can adjust the gas limit so you can put more transactions in each block just by changing the gas limit. You change the seconds from 10 to 12 is barely anything. I mean, Pulsechain is similar to Ethereum, so long-term scalability is going to be layer 2 solutions. So what really needs to happen is once you start getting Pulsechain to a point where full blocks are actually happening and you're actually competing for gas for block space, then there needs to be a team that is developing layer 2 solutions like Ethereum is happening right now. Like you have like Shiba Inu has a chain, L2 chain. There's a bunch of new layer 2 blockchains that are on Ethereum. And so Pulsechain will actually have that too, years into the future after it launches. And that's how
So
it
you,
scales.
so you think that like maybe like it would be incumbent for one of these developers, one of these, for example, teams to build like what Polygon is doing with Hermes, with ZK Sync, with ZK rollups or optimistic rollups to bring more scalability. You think that could be a future approach, a layer 2
Yeah.
launching on chain? Okay.
In a couple of years, that's absolutely some team is going to be doing that, and it'll be used because there's got to be a framework and there's got to be a way to deploy that on Pulsechain, even if it's like basically copying and pasting what Ethereum is doing. But it's got to be copied and pasted and then have us use it, and it's got to be attached to Pulsechain in a way that makes sense. And this is years away, obviously, a few years.
Correct. As long as Pulsechain is an exact copy, right, and implements all the same EIPs as Ethereum going forward, then it should be able to inherit these things and implement them with relatively lower effort, right? Not going to say zero effort, but just relatively lower effort because like Gamma just said, you just repoint it, tweak a few details, and you're good to go, right?
Yeah.
So as long as we stay in sync, we're good. If Pulsechain diverges and maybe selects not to implement certain EIPs and maybe implement some of its own EIPs, you're getting further and further away from each other. And then integrating those changes becomes more and more difficult the further you diverge, right?
It's whether or not we're in sync the entire way or if we start diverging. And then you have to retool what Ethereum is developing for, say, layer 2s or a lot of the stuff. And it takes a lot more effort, a lot more developer, mental brain power, a lot more money. But we have to launch first. But obviously, this is something to think about for the future.
Yeah, I agree, and I know Richard has brought up, and again, I think don't correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm almost positive Richard brought up that Pulsechain will be listed on OKX when it launches. For what I remember him saying, so it will be launched on OKX to my knowledge.
There is talk about that, yeah.
Hey, so when you realized that everything was going over to proof of stake, what did that initially make you feel like, and what worries were you? I'm talking about before obviously, many months before all of this. But what was your initial reaction when you looked through some of these things and thought about the new process in Ethereum when they, when they upgraded and the merge happened? I think everyone let it kind of go by and pretended like it's all Gucci, but in reality, there can be a lot of technical things that a lot of people don't know about, including myself. And I wanted to ask you if that raised any alarms for you, or if anything that you were confused about, concerned about, or thinking about that could insight some of us newer guys.
No, I mean, so a lot of the work they put into Guess for Pulsechain, they could inherit from the work that they had done prior. So that's good. That's a good part. But they had to retool Prism, basically. And for the longest period of time, I didn't know for sure if they were going to use Prism because they didn't tell anybody. They didn't even confirm Prism was one of the clients until a couple weeks ago. And then that was about the same time that he confirmed that they're also retooling Lighthouse and then Aragon, which is great to have 2 execution layer environments and then also 2 consensus layer environments. But restarting everything from scratch, kind of from scratch, but not really. And then like the delay, right? You're like, oh my God, May, we're 2 weeks away from launching. And then all of a sudden, we're going to scrap that whole idea and we're going to move to Ethereum. Obviously, I wasn't so happy about it, but obviously, like, I'm just here, as a community member. I mean, I'm more positive about it now because I like what Ethereum is doing. I'm very pro Ethereum and pro Ethereum, say like roadmap 10, 15 years in the future. So Pulse Chain piggybacking on that and focusing on layer twos is very positive. A lot of the benefits to Pulse Chain, the gas savings, obviously it's not 3-second blocks anymore. There's the changing of the gas limit isn't as much, but having Pulse 1.2 million times more than Ethereum is a built-in way to have lower gas fees, even if you have full blocks. So there is gas savings, even in this next bull run. If Ethereum gas fee is say $6,000, and then you have a Pulse gas fee that's like $10, like that's a huge savings for doing the exact same transaction. And I just threw those numbers like out of nowhere. But I'm just saying, I've done the math before, and like simply with the increasing in supply of Pulse Chain and the lower price point for Pulse Chain, and the fact that Ethereum and Pulse Chain both calculate gas fees for contract calls the same, and as long as they stay pretty similar, depending on the GUI that takes, right? How much GUI does it take to do a transaction? Even that being said, full blocks in Ethereum during this next bull market, you could totally see $6,000 transactions to do some complicated like hex unstake that's from like day one, or like yield farm, or doing whatever transaction on Ethereum. You could be in the thousands of dollars pretty easily in the top of the next bull run if Ethereum is $10,000-$15,000. That exact same transaction on Pulse Chain, ones of dollars, tens of dollars. So you're still going to have that narrative of like cheap gas fees for the same thing. That's not going to go away. I've heard people say, "Oh no, that's gone away." I'm like, one, it hasn't really, because of the token supply, the coin supply of Pulse Chain, and since gas fees are calculated the same with different volumes of transactions on the Ethereum versus Pulse Chain, we'll have different bidding of the GUI required to do those transactions. So that'll be different, but it'll still be cheaper. And then they're not any faster. So they're the same speed, right? 12-second block times versus 10-second block times. Gas limits, the amount of transactions you put in each block, slightly different, but pretty close to the same. I like that a Pulse Chain is going to be the one and only fork of Ethereum that's the current Ethereum and not like a prior state of Ethereum. So you have all these other blockchains that are layer one blockchains, but they're the old Ethereum. They're not the new Ethereum. So Pulse Chain is going to be the only alternative blockchain that's a fork of the new Ethereum, with layer two solution focus, with the beacon chain, with the execution environment, Geth and Aragon. So I see that as a positive. So I'm good with the change. I mean, they need to launch it. I'm hoping to see testnet, whenever you guys do. That'd be great.